Hey everybody, Joe Conkley in the shop, Facebook Live at Elderly Instruments. Today we got John Joswiak here with me, and we are going to look at this 1927 L3 that John's been working on. This is a guitar that we had for sale here at Elderly for a little while, and when we first got it in, we had concerns about this area. You can see some creases and stress in the top here. It was already starting to move a little bit, but the interior bracing was solid, no loose braces. There was some repair. There's a repaired crack in this area, and that was solid. So we decided to put it up for sale like that. But as it sat with string tension on, that part of the top,
right there, it was really tweaked.
It really moved a lot, so it sunk way down in right here. Started to fold, right on that.
And the braces were still on too. That was the weird thing.
Mm-hmm. And we were just speculating now. For starters, we had to speculate how we're going to fix this. How are we going to make it solid again? And now that we have an approach, and we'll show you what John has taken an approach to rebracing the top. And we were wondering, why does that happen? We were just looking at the oval sound hole, how wide the oval sound hole is, and how little wood there is between the edge of the sound hole and the waist. And I don't think there's just a lot of support on any guitar. This area here, right at the end of the fingerboard, from string tension, is putting a lot of downward pressure, and many guitars have a big hole right in the middle of the top, right in that very crucial structural area. But of course, that sound hole is part of how the sound projects out. But that's one of the conundrums that bracing at top leads you to, is how can I reinforce this area right here when I've already got a big hole right in the middle.
Yeah, and we've seen some problems with oval sound holes guitars before, and I don't know why.
Of different brands too.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to a round hole. I'm not really sure why either, but it does.
Maybe it just ends up too far out to the edges or something. I don't really know. But
yeah, we've seen it more. One of the things we were just looking at, it has nothing to do with these structural concerns. It's just this really cool rosette. Like a lot of Gibsons, it has the binding on the inside of the hole, but it has this, I guess you might call it a 3-ring rosette, because it has the little checkered ring, and then this dark brown ring. Well, I don't know how many. It depends on how many rings you want to count, but it has this little center maple ring, and these little diamond-shaped ivoroid pieces. We were just noticing, you can see it on this one right here, that little dark seam. There are 3 little pieces of ivoroid that make up each one of those diamonds, so it's kind of like a piece of binding on edge cut. But we're just noticing that it's just a very cool, interesting rosette. But so
I was looking at this thing, trying to figure out what I was going to do, and the back was pretty much coming off. It wasn't glued on very well. I thought, well, I'll take the back off and see what's going on. So,
which is a standard thing as far as getting access to the inside of the guitar. You'd think if you're having top problems, you might take the top off, but on most guitars, you have to take the neck off first before you can take the top off. And so many times you can take the back off without taking the neck off.
And the back was coming off pretty good. So.
Yeah, and it gives you easy access. And then you can, in addition to stabilizing the top, you're also influencing the neck angle. Because the neck angle is the relationship of the guitar, of the neck to the bridge and the height of the bridge. So one of the keys to the height of the bridge is the arch in the top, or if there is an arch in the top, and how solid that is and how much that moves. So anyhow, another thing that makes a neck angle move and change over time is this whole area here rolls like this. So you get the sides can start out very flat but tend to bow like that. The back moves, and of course with all that sort of movement on this guitar, it's rolling right into that ridge there where all that movement was. So the back came off pretty easy, as you were mentioning to me before, but it's in beautiful shape.
It is in pretty
really
good shape.
Nice.
It's not cracked or anything.
Yeah, really nice arch to it still.
And the label's pretty nice.
The label's beautiful, really good shape. Gibson guitar, style L3. Serial number puts it in 1927, just down the road in Kalamazoo is where this baby came from. Two-piece maple back?
Yeah, well, probably.
It looks like maple to us, although birch is a pretty common wood used for the archtop guitars and archtop mandolins of the era. So, to take the back off, usually got to pop the binding off. Let's see. On some guitars, the binding is the same size as the back, and that looks like this pretty much.
It's pretty close.
It's pretty close. Sometimes the binding will overlap that back seam where the binding will be a little deeper. It might fit down to there, so you have to take it off just to expose that seam. But we got the binding off. Johnny got the binding off in real good shape. Good possibility to be able to reuse that.
Oh, definitely going to reuse it.
Mm-hmm. And the back is in real good shape. So,
got part of some of the braces that were in there.
Yeah.
I think I might have thrown the other ones away. I don't know.
well, so you were saying, well, this is basically how it was before, this one brace, but this brace was not, you have these new braces pretty much full length, and this one was,
Yeah.
how was this one oriented?
It was just like, like that. It went all the way to the end block down here, but it only went up to probably about here. And I thought, boy, it'd be nice to span it. And another thing too is this little cross brace here was tucked underneath those tone bars.
Yeah, you can see the glue right there where it tucked in just a little bit. And so coupling braces together like that. One way on a lot of guitars that braces are coupled in a real subtle way is just butted up against one another. But anytime you can lock the two in further. So basically what it is it's there's a little notch cut in the bottom of this brace to accommodate, maybe right there.
Yeah, probably.
Look at that
yeah.
right there. That's the notch right there. That one fits right in there like that. And even that small amount of coupling makes a big difference structurally,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you've done a small variation on that.
Yeah, I thought,
Sort of
since it was tucked, I figured I'd make braces that went across the whole thing since it was having a lot of...
And this, of course, was the
problems.
major area where it was moving. So this brace going across does a lot to strengthen that. We're kind of missing a step here, though, because so you took the back off,
Yep.
took the braces out, and then you did something to reshape and reform the top.
Yeah, I made this crazy form, and I got some hot water, and I got the top wet on each side of the sound hole, and I clamped it up overnight to change the shape of where it was collapsing here and here,
Yeah.
and it covered the whole thing. Because basically this carved top has a flat ledge going around the outside edge, so I figured if I had that in there and clamped it that way, I could change the shape of it, and it worked pretty good.
Yeah, so heat and moisture and clamping pressure over a fairly long period of time, over 24 hours or more, was able to move that. And then you could take your new braces and shape them to that new shape. You took and put a new really solid cleat under this massive crack there. Very thin, but fairly wide, so it really reinforces that crack. And then we got these braces going the whole length of the top. And this same idea here, but kind of supersized in that not only does this brace notch into here, but it goes all the way through. So this is one piece.
I wanted to take it all the way out to the edge because there were some problems going on out here. The wood was a little flimsy and floppy, and then I thought, well, it was also pretty flexible right here. So I thought.
So we got another cross brace that is notched into both of these braces.
And the bridge is going to go somewhere up here, and I didn't want the brace to be where the bridge was going to be. So I thought, well, just to help stabilize it, I'll put it closer to the end block.
The first thing that I thought when I saw this, as John was working on it, that it reminded me of what's called the Gibson H brace, which is a bracing pattern they used on some of their first flat top guitars. It would have that a real similar shape. oval sound, maybe a round sound hole, but you know, oval or round sound hole. But as you can see where the idea of the H comes from. You know, really, there's your H right there. Another thing that's kind of different. Your braces are placed. These two are placed pretty much where the other ones were.
Oh, there's yeah, they
exactly.
are.
And so most arch tops, many arch tops either have an X brace or a pair of tone bars, as they're called, or tone bar bracing, which is this two braces like this with nothing else going on. You know, and they're like that other one. They're ending before what might be called the recurve. On a lot of arch top instruments, you can see this little ridge right in here, about 3/4 of an inch or so inside the perimeter, where here's the thickest part, and then the arch drops down and thins out right in here, and then gets thicker right around the edge. So this edge right here is the most flexible part of the arch top. It's kind of I saw it on a really great TV show about violin acoustics.
Oh, they make them real thin there?
Well, they compared it to a trampoline.
Oh, okay.
That was and they actually had a guy on a trampoline jumping up and down, and so the person on the trampoline on a violin was the what's the post called?
The sound post.
The sound post. The sound post was the person on the violin, and the springs were this recurve area.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how the air movement in the top goes. You know, it's moving straight up and down, with this area being the most flexible. So anyhow, a lot of them with the tone bars have the opposite angle.
You know, I think they had to do that because of the shape of the sound hole.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
plus there's not much wood here, because otherwise these would be way out here.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just strikes me as the opposite of what
I know.
I'm used to
I
seeing
know.
in
I was
that, in
surprised
that
when I took the back
angle
off,
of the
too.
tone bars too. But it really has that H bracing thing that Gibson used on their early flat tops.
Yeah. So these braces are oversized right now, so I'm probably going to make them a little bit smaller.
Well,
And,
the first thing about this instrument was to return some structure to the top.
Yeah,
You know,
'cause
so that's what you've got here, and from
It's
here.
like it's 90 years old, 91 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you can't add. It's much easier to take wood away than it is to add it after the fact. So the other thing we're noticing is we've exposed the dovetail joint here in the neck block. And Gibson dovetail joints are a little bit different from the Martin ones of the period. It's a hand-cut dovetail. So this block is a solid piece of wood, and they take a dovetail saw and make these two very precise cuts here down to that depth at this angle like this. So
They probably cut it after the guitar is assembled, as opposed to just cutting a bunch of neck blocks first.
The block is glued in to the sides.
Yeah, that would make sense, because that's
And
why it's so irregular.
before the back and the top are put on, that angle is cut. So it's an angle there's two angles going on. One this direction, and then it's angled like that also. So they cut that angle down, and then you can see the irregularity at the bottom of that cavity is from just chiseling that out. That's how it's created, rather than a modern routed dovetail, with a dovetail bit. And then the neck dovetail tenon is created in the same way, just as two very precise saw cuts.
They sure were good at it.
That's for sure. I mean, that's fit super.
The thing that's really impressive is how the mandolins are put together. That's really something.
Mandolins have a very similar, dovetail tenon connection, and they are ridiculous.
And it's got all those other curves and things going in the.
And it's so small.
Yeah.
They're
pretty impressive.
For sure. Mm-hmm. So the kerfing survived really well.
Pretty well.
Because it's fairly soft wood, so that they can, and it's cut. These saw cuts are cut in quite deep. You can see that they're very close to being sawn right through there, which allows it to be flexible, so you can glue it to the sides here. And basically that is to get a gluing surface that is a little bit wider, so you're not just doing the very edge of the side glued to the back. It creates a bigger gluing surface. And a lot of times when you remove the back, it's especially these Gibson ones with this, it's almost a balsa type. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, poplar or something.
Yeah, and
Super.
these are almost individual pieces that
Yep.
end up blasting out.
Yep, on a Spanish guitar they are individual
Oh,
pieces.
yeah,
What do they
yeah.
call those? The tentalones. Did I get that right, Tom? Yeah, well, he's begging off on that one. Another thing we noticed is all these side reinforcement pieces, which are pretty substantial.
Yeah, they're
A lot of older guitars just have a piece of cloth tape,
Yeah.
glued to the inside as a side reinforcement piece. And I see a lot on the modern guitar. It's just a slat, but it's just a unique little side brace. I see some makers also doing a brace very much like like this on the side, only a smaller
Oh, yeah,
version.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen some of the makers do that, but just an interesting look into the interior. So the next steps would just be to start removing some top brace wood to try and lighten it up, but still maintain that structure, and that's just going to be by feel, basically. You can definitely tap.
It sounded pretty good.
And flex.
I was putting a tuning fork on it,
Mhm.
right where the bridge would be, and it sounded pretty good right there.
Good. I've done some top rebracing on mandolins from the area, with the same sort of thing, where actually most of the mandolins from this area have a brace just like that.
Yeah.
And that's all. So not a lot of support to the top. All the structural support is in the carve of that top, and when it starts to give, they not only do you get structural problems and neck angle problems and action problems, but it just starts to turn to mud. The sound just is a thud. And so when I've rebraced one of those, you have that same question. Okay, I got to get it solid, so I want to put something substantial in there, but I don't want to kill the sound.
Yeah, yeah.
I found that something like this, coupling of the braces and a fairly substantial brace, it firms it up, and you actually get some high end out of it and some focus to the sound rather than that muddy sound.
Yeah,
So-
well, like I said, when I was putting a tuning fork on the outside surface where the bridge was approximately going to be, it sounded pretty good right in that area. So
Cool.
It seemed to be loudest there, too,
yeah.
which was good.
Yeah, so a little bit of experimenting with brace carving and such, and then the back's going to go on, huh?
Yeah, carve the braces a little bit, put the back on, put the binding on.
The back.
Then
One
probably-
nice thing about we're just setting the back on there. It took me 5 seconds to do that.
It's going to be really close.
And sometimes when you take the back off and a guitar has been under all kinds of string tension, it's changing shape from that, and now you're rechanging the shape. You can get some weird things happening to the outline of the
sometimes it'll
sides.
spring out, or the back will have shrunk.
Yeah, and the back and the sides don't match up nearly as well as one would like. But this is
But I think this one's going to go together pretty good.
which is great
It's gonna be
because
very close, and I'll be able to use that binding.
Yeah, because if you do get some oddities there, it's very difficult then to use the same binding because you have to do what you can to match those up, and then sometimes what you have to do is to cut a new binding channel that might be a little bit wider to
Yeah.
cover up some of the oddities that are happening.
Yeah,
but
but I
this,
think-
it's nice that this is going back together so well in that fashion.
I put it on here earlier, and it looks as though
Yeah,
it's going
it's going to be
to be
perfect.
just
is what-
about. It's going to be just about right. you
Yeah,
know?
it looks really perfect.
So I think it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it'll sound good too.
Yeah, that is the deal. So this is, as we said, a 1927 Gibson L-3 that in a little while,
Probably next week.
probably next week,
Probably
Johnny's
next
like
week.
that. It might take me a little longer, but
Once I start doing something, I want to do it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's great, man. So there you go. Look for it next week. It'll be a backup for sale here at Elderly Instruments. Look at our vintage page, 1927 Gibson L3. And that's all for In the Shop today. Thanks for tuning in. Like us on Facebook, share us, and we'll see you next week.
See you.